consumers are using when making A&R decisions. Consumers are saying, again, that they're doing their due diligence prior to voting for ag and natural resource policy. However, prior literature says that consumers typically don't follow policy very tightly. And when preparing to vote, the only time that they're truly being invested in what they're voting for and preparing and seeking out knowledge is in a presidential campaign. So looking at saying that they're doing their due diligence kind of contradicts what the prior literature is saying of what the norm is. Also, there's a lot of neutral attitudes towards the PAWS Act. Again, because of that unfamiliarity with the PAWS Act, people are just in taking knowledge and not really having an opinion on it very quickly because they're just in that peripheral processing route. We also need to talk about this idea of the vote buy gap. So very briefly, what that means is consumers would likely favor a policy, especially in this animal agriculture, animal welfare space, but they don't want to pay more for their resources as a result. So like we talked about when we discussed the PAWS Act, if this were to pass, it would result in food prices being higher. So while consumers indicated that they might slightly favor, again, it was just above that 3-point mark, might favor the act. They did not, however, in other questions, like that it would result in a higher price of food and resources. So for my recommendations as a result of this study, recommendations for practice would, as an industry, we need to continue to provide consumers with animal husbandry information and encourage them to understand what the difference between animal welfare and animal rights are and what standard animal husbandry practices are in the industry. We also need to continue to communicate the implications of policy passage. If consumers are well educated and understand what the consequences of certain actions might be, then they can make a more educated, confident decision that they believe is reliable. And if we continue to do both of those things, we will likely increase motivation and ability, which then would allow them to be at a higher level of elaboration and again, feel more confident in the decisions that they're making. As we look to our recommendations for research, we would like to also evaluate additional sources and additional source types. And we'd like to replicate this study with a more familiar policy to see if we got the same types of results. And we'd also like to further break down all of these findings by demographic, looking at the difference between how men and women are voting and how socioeconomic differences are voting in different geographical regions as well. So that leaves us to the synthesis of our findings overall. Most importantly, we need to remember as an industry that consumer behavior impacts industry. At the end of the day, consumers are the ones that hold the power with their dollar and with their vote, and we need to be serving the consumer as an industry to make sure that their needs are met and that they have the information that they would like in the manner in which they would like. Which also leads to consumer education. Again, we want to see that increase in motivation and ability that will allow consumers to elaborate more and be more confident in that decision, and that comes with knowledge and understanding, which can come through consumer education. And we can see that visual stimuli do make a difference, and if we build strong, reputable brands, we can more effectively market our product and ensure that Nebraska beef is the prime product being sold around the United States. So with that, I'd like to thank everyone for their time today, and to say a special thank you to all of the people on this screen. For the last 2 years, I've been working on this research, and it has been an absolute blast, but I could not have done it without the amazing support system and the support system of my committee that I have been so very blessed with. So with that, thank you for your time, and I'd love to entertain any questions.